Okay, sir has joined.
Yes, madam. Yes.
Okay, good evening, sir. Good evening, respected members of the Research Foundation of India team, our distinguished guest speaker, Dr. Kunal Soni, sir, and all esteemed participants. I'm Dr. Neha Jain, the program coordinator, and on behalf of RFI, I extend a warm welcome to each of you. We are on day 5 of the faculty development program and the training program on innovative teaching and learning pedagogy. Today's focus is on the topic of experiential learning pedagogy. This collaborative effort is organized by Research Foundation of India, RFI-CARE, HMR Institute of Technology and Management in association with Shodh Malwa and DPIT. It is sponsored by Eklavya University, JHERF, ARGA, and Edu Academic Inc. It is our privilege to have Dr. Kunal Soni sir, an esteemed associate professor of finance and accounting at the School of Management, GSFC University, Vadodara, here with us once again to grace our program with his exceptional knowledge and insights. So let us once again extend a cordial welcome to the esteemed Dr. Kunal Soni sir. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Okay. Thank you, madam. Just confirm the screen sharing. Yeah. Screen visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, good evening, all. Today is a day 5 for this. I think day 4, right? So for this faculty development program on the experiential learning, right? So yesterday we had a huge discussion on group discussion part, and today one more addition that we are going to see as a part of the experiential learning. So when we talks about the experiential learning, right? So it includes very wide term. So when we talks about the wide term includes each and everything which will have some add-on things in terms of the value addition, through some experimentation, right? And when we talks about the experimentation, right? So it always talks in the sense of the trial and error version that we have to, gone through with the various kinds of, trial and error, and we will see the value addition, or rather we can see the things that we are delivering and things that we are receiving on the part of the audience, right? So ultimately when we talks about innovative teaching and learning pedagogy, in terms of the students point of view, so you must need to ensure that it should put some value addition, it should put some add-on things as a part of the experimentation. Then only these tools can be utilized for the further aspect. Otherwise it would be very difficult on the user's perspective. So we as a trainer, we as a mentor, we must need to ensure that whatsoever tools that we are utilizing as a part of our innovative teaching and learning, it should be tried and tested, then only it would be utilized. So that is where we have to see to it. So with that note, I'll start my presentation. So the flow of presentation for the today's session is, firstly, we will see the meaning in terms of, what is the meaning of experimentation learning, right? So we will see the various parameters on this part, how the experimentation learning has been evolved, why people are talking about this particular concept, and why the market is gaining much more importance as a part of the experiential learning, from the student's perspective, in terms of the value addition, in terms of enhancing the sharpness, knowledge, skills, so all those parameters are going to be very, very important as far as experiential learning is concerned. Then second portion that we have to talk about is who has given this particular theory as far as the experiential learning is concerned, right? So we also have to see that person who has given this particular theory. So we talks about the authors who has given this particular theory. Then we will talks about the different stages for the experiential learning. So when we talks about the experiential learning, how the different stages needs to be, evaluated, how the different stage needs to be measured, and at the same time, when we talks about the different stages, we will also see the outcomes from the point of view of the target audience. And the target audience is nothing but Either that could be students, either that could be faculty, and in a nutshell, it could be the target audience, right? Who is on the receiving side from the various kinds of knowledge sharing activities that we are looking for among the students, right? So this is different stages of experiential learning. Then we also have to discuss about the various methods for the experiential learning, right? So what sort of different methods that we need to discuss as a part of experiential learning. So there are various methods for the experiential learning that we have to discuss. So we will also suggest and see to it that what are the different kinds of methods that we can utilize, how we should utilize each of the methods into different scenario, with the consideration of time, with the consideration of efforts, with the consideration of the objective for taking that particular session, things that we have to decide. So all these things are going to be useful for us. So yes, we have to see the different kinds of methods for the experiential learning. So let's start with the meaning of experiential learning. So very, very important, there is one Chinese psychologist who has given this particular proverb, and that is, tell me, I'll forget. So just remember the schooling time, right? When we have been forced to teach, to learn, by having reading of books, articles, all such aspect. So what is the chances of, getting remember those things, right? So it's almost, we should forget, So whenever you learn any concept into the classroom teaching learning process, and if somebody is telling you, do you remember, do you recall? So there is hardly chances that you will remember and recall those concepts. So there is a chances that you will forget, right? So whenever you just read it, there is a psychological parameter that you only remember the 20% of the total concept that you are reading out of the books, right? So whenever you are undergoing with the any concept for the first time and you are reading by your own, there are hardly chances of 20% that you will remember, right? So that means the 80% of the concept will go out of the mind, right? So that is what tell me and I'll forget. The second aspect is, in addition to that, instead of having the physical classroom delivery, instead of having the chalk and talk, let's modify it and let's demonstrate some live practical aspect with them, with some with utilization of various kinds of props, which depend upon the subject and area in which you are dealing with, right? So that is what is, you show me and I may remember, right? So instead of just delivering the concept in terms of lecture mode, rather than we should experiment something, we should show them the live demonstration of the entire process or the concept that we are trying to teach to the students. And this kind of demonstration will clarify and will give some more understanding in terms of the concept that we are trying to portray among the students, right? So the basic purpose of saying this is, whenever you are doing such kind of trial and error things, so there are chances that the understanding of the students are gaining quite high in comparison to just delivering the session into the classroom, right? So the chances of students to get remember is almost getting increased up to 50% of the level. So earlier, when we have only physical classroom delivery with chalk and talk, it was 20% only the first instance, right? But at the same time, if we're delivering any concept for the first instance, and in this case, if we bring some demonstration of the concept, then instead of 20%, students' chances to get remember, to understand the concept, will reach up to 50% instead of 20%. So that is what is has to be said. And the third option, instead of telling them or instead of showing them, right, we will adopt the third parameter. The third parameter says that instead of telling and showing, right, let's involve students into the actual process, right? So instead of telling them the concept, instead of showing them the concept, let's involve them lively, practically into the concept. So what is the benefit that students will receive is, so whenever you involve students into practically, right, involve them into practically, they will actually understand the concept, right? So what is the benefit of getting is this, when you involve them into the practical learning process, with the concept that they have to learn. Let's take an example. Whatever concept that we are teaching to the students, so instead of teaching them with the book and the physical delivery of the session, let's send them in some industry and let them allow to do the practical process. Or instead of showing them the demonstration of the concept into the classroom, let's allow them to process this in a practical manner. Let's say many of the times it happens into chemical labs also. So the student have to perform the practical mixture of particular chemical, and they have to evolve some products. So until and unless if they don't try by themselves, they will not understand. And the confidence that they have to build, it will not come out, right? So, and instead the students will perform the process by their own. So there is a chances that they will not forget this kind of things forever, right? Just remember your life also, when you were not learn how to drive a car, right? So you were wondering how the car has been running on the road. But the moment you involved into the process, you practically understood the difficulties and the challenges that you need to overcome, and gradually you have done it. You are now driving a car with your own speeds, with your own comfort, right? So until and unless if you don't involve them into the process, they will not understand the process. And it is very important that the understanding of process is very, very important, and that will allow the students to digest those concepts and theories up to 80% level in the first instance, right? So at the first instance, they will understood what are the pros and cons that they have to take care in any particular process or products that they have to involve. So in a nutshell, whatever teaching that we are doing to your students, as a faculty, we make these sessions to be live, practical, and through which we must need to ensure that the involvement of the students into the classroom should always be there. Because until and unless if they do involve themselves into the classroom whenever the sessions are going on, they will not understand, right? So that is where the involvement creates better understanding, and better understandings will create the better synergy for the further future prospect, right? So that is where we have to see to it. So there is a message from the National Education Policy 2020, if it talks about in terms of utilization of the pedagogy, right? When we talks about the classroom teaching and learning process. So the first instance, that National Education Policy 2020 is talking about is the learning should be experiential. That means they should practically involve, right? They are practically involved into this entire process, through which they will create their proper understanding. They will understand, they will experience the challenges, and they should also realize what are the benefits if they are able to do this, and if they are able to digest those concepts into the future aspect. So yes, it should be experiential, then holistic. So holistic in sense, it should be overall development of the students. So students should be holistically decide and develop themselves into the practical aspect. So yes, the holistic development of the students could be possible. Then the process should be integrated. So integrated means no department should work individually, right? No individual department can provide and the growth of the students, but the integrated approach among the different department will create a synergy and will provide the overall growth of the students. So we must need to ensure that the process should be integrated, aligned with different department, integrated with each other. Then only the process should get processed. Otherwise, it will be very difficult, to have all things together and provide such aspect. Then the third is inquiry driven. So whatever concept that we are teaching to students, we must need to put some pause in terms of the question mark, right? So students are forced to drive the inquiries for all these aspects, and that is where it is called the inquiry driven. That means there should be some question mark, there should be some self assessment, self homework, which students are forced to do it, and that's where they will be able to digest those concepts, at least by having in touch, having in accuracy, having in efforts. They will make understand all those aspects that has to be done. Then it should be discovery oriented, means it should be provide something extraordinary, right? That should provide some output based teaching learning process that we are talking about. So they should came out with some innovative output at the end of the process, which they have not, even forecasted before entering into the process. That's where we will able to, develop the curiosity among the students, and this curiosity will leads to, impactful teaching learning process. And that is nothing but, for doing such aspect, we also have to experiment so many things, and that is where the experiential learning plays an important role. And ultimately, when we talks about experience of many things, we must need to ensure that the learner should be at the center point, because we must need to understand that whatever process that we are doing, it is ultimately for the learner perspective. The learner should be at the center point. At no cost the learner should get sacrificed, and learner should be at the center point. Fourth, lastly, it is discussion based. So whatsoever innovative teaching, even I'm not saying that whether this particular teaching learning process was effective or not. So this kind of feedback should also be taken from the students, because ultimately their understanding matters a lot. So at least whatever innovative teaching learning mode that we are applying into classroom teaching learning process, we must need to take a feedback about the comfortness, about the betterness from the students. And that's why we will improve our process for the coming generation. So that is where the discussion should always be allowed, and it should be open based discussion. And we should also be ready for handling the critics at a time, right? We should not take it personally. And that's where the teaching learning process in all the modes, it should be flexible, right? So flexible in a sense, students are allowed, when I told you that experiential learning means students should get experiential, right? And that is means they should allow to operate all the modes, all the parameters, all the instruments which are necessary for their understanding, in this teaching learning process. And that's where the freedom should always be allowed to the students. Whatsoever things that they need to operate into these, universities, institutes, colleges, so they are free to do it, right? There should be some cap on other aspect, but yes, the parameters are necessary for them to understanding. So we must allow them to operate those instrument, and have the more and more trial and error version. And that's where the students will be able to create their better understanding, right? So that is where the process should be flexible. And at the last, whatsoever teaching and learning process that we are trying to injecting in the minds of students, we must need to ensure that until and unless if the entire process is not enjoyable, the students will not learn, right? So that is where it's very, very important that students should enjoy the entire process, and students should be at the center point in whatsoever process that we are doing it. And that's where we must need to ensure that the process should not get monotonous, but it should be student centric, inquiry driven, discovery oriented, output based, flexible, and through which the overall synergy among the students and the faculties should be go into positive direction. So that is where the aim of the application of innovative teaching and learning pedagogy through the experiential learning. And it is keep experimenting, right? I'm not saying that the person who was having the better feedback and better response of the students before 10 years, and the same teaching learning pedagogy he is utilizing today, then I think the result will be different, because the changes are keep going on, technologies are keep evolving, and it is our responsibility that we should learn. We should be on the path of the learning of those technological parameters, changes, as per the demands of the industries, need of an hour analysis. So all this aspect needs to be done through the various experiments by the faculties, and through which we will try to incorporate such a new aspect. And that's where, as one of the parameter is, that is discussion based and inquiry driven, right? So how the curiosity should be generated when the students are experimenting those things for the first time. That means you have to bring out certain new changes as far as you can, and through which you can make it more experiential. Okay, so now what is experiential learning according to you, right? So I think the concept is almost clear. We have discussed all the parameters of NEP, and where NEP is already talking about the experiential learning, innovative teaching learning process, right? So the innovativeness and the students' output in a positive sense is at most a priority from all the aspect of this experiential learning. So what is experiential learning according to you? So the first aspect as a part of experiential learning is we must need to ensure that the active participation among the students needs to be ensured, because until and unless if the participants participation is not going to be active mode, right? So because it is, give and take relationship, right? So it is not like that the process is only going on one way traffic, where the faculty is only speaking in the classroom and students are least bothered about what is going on and what is the content has been delivered into the classroom, right? So the ultimate objective of national education policy will not be survived and fulfilled, right? So it is our responsibility that we make our classes to be engaged, more experimental and inquiry driven, so that the students curiosity should always be there and they will pay attention to the classes, and that's where they can be able to digest the concept into right manner, and that should be reflected, right? So that is a reflection based learning. So if at all you are managing all those parameters into proper way, so the reflection of the students in terms of active engagement into the classroom should always be there, right? So yesterday we had a discussion, and uh, still I don't consider that it was an active engagement, but yeah, we had a 4 5 great question answer round at the end of the session. So that is called reflection, right? So whatever the content which has been delivered by me, so I need to ensure that I should not speak alone and alone, right? But I also give some times to the participants and students, that whether they have understood, or if at all after my understanding and my content delivery, if at all they have some difference of opinion or they might have some confusions, to ask the questions. That is where this window is open for all of us, right? And we must utilize those window to clarify those concepts, right? That is called the reflection in experiential learning. It also based on problem, right? Because until and unless if you don't face a problem, you will not adopt the changes, right? So this is a fact and harsh reality of the today's world. So until and unless if the person does not face any problem, he will not change. He will not look for the changes, right? So it is very, very important that we first face the problem, then only we will look forward for the changes. Otherwise, it is very, very difficult, right? And at the same time, we also needs to take into consideration the collaborations, right? So whenever we talks about experiential, right, so you must collaborate your efforts with other university, corporate institutes, right, who are doing this courses, right? And that's where you can make your efforts into collaborative manner, right? So if you collaborate with them, you will create some synergy, and through which the ultimate output, the proper output should be generated, right? So this is considered to be in a collaborative mode. And most importantly, the students will learn in the classroom by doing by their own. So that is where learning by doing, right? So until and unless if the students will not learn, they will not be able to do it, right? So it is very, very important that we must need to ensure that the students should be do things by having practical exposures at a point of time of having only theoretical point. So theory should be digested by the students in a proper manner only when they should practically do the things by their hands. That's where the psychological impact says that at the instant, if at all students have been practically engaged themselves into the process, in the first instant itself, the understanding that they will develop in comparison to the physical classroom where only the delivery of the lecture is happening is 4 times more than the physical delivery of the classes. And that's where NEP and all such aspects are focusing more on skill based learning, right? So you must be aware about that. We are preparing syllabus for the students based on teaching scheme, where we are giving imposed and importance to the skill enhancement courses, value added courses. So what does this course talks about? These are not the courses that should be taught to the students by only having the delivery of the lectures, but these are the courses which needs to be justified, which needs to be executed with the practical exposures, right? We need to put some content of the practicalities, right? So that is where they will learn by doing. So there is one psychologist that is called Kolb experiential learning cycle. So what the Kolb experiential learning cycles talks about, so here you need to understand, right? So the Kolb says that, right, firstly, until and unless if you don't experiment for the first time, so firstly you have to involve yourself into any of the process that is called concrete experience, that is act, do and experience. So firstly you have to act, right? And you experience what is happening and what is not happening, what to avoid, what not to avoid. So that is where you act, you do by yourself, and once you do yourself, you will came to know what is right and what is wrong for you. That is always comes from the experience, right? So that is what it's called, act, do and experience, right? So that is called concrete experience. Once you have the concrete experience, you will go to the next stage, which is called the reflective observations, right? So once you do it, you must be aware about the mistakes, the improvements that you are looking for in the particular process. And that's where it has been said that whenever we talks about the reflective observations, right? And if at all we are looking for the improvement in our process in teaching learning, we must think about the past, we must think about the previous process that we have done it, and we must need to assess, right? We must need to assess that what is the mistakes that we have made it, and through which we need to decide what went well and what not well, right? So what went well for us and what not went well for us, and through which we can provide some reflective observations. Then abstract conceptualization. So once we have a reflective observation, so we must have the observation that what was good for us and what was not good for us, right? So that is called reflective observation. And then we need to see this abstract conceptualization. So make sense of the experience. So whatever the experimentation that we went well for us and what was the experience was not went for us. So we always try to avoid those things for the future aspect. So we will not try to touch all those experiments which was not went well as far as the teaching and learning delivery mode in front of the students, right? So as a faculty on the delivery mode, it was not good for us, or sometimes it is good for us, but we must need to ensure that the experiential learning says that ultimately your target audience, that is the students or the learner, should be at the center point. If they are not enjoying your teaching learning process, then we must need to drop out those kind of methods, right? So that is very, very important that to understand that the reflective observation will always try to see back and see to it the observations of the people either through the feedback. I think many of the universities and institutes are taking every 6 monthly feedback from the students, semester wise to feedback from the students for the faculties, and this is nothing but the reflective observation, right? So whatsoever the 6 months efforts which has been put by the faculty in particular subject or classes through the particular experimentation, so whether those experimentation went well or not, or even faculty can also take out those feedback on 15 days, right? Instead of they don't want to stretch out to 6 months, because it will have a negative impact on the university. So they can also experiment for 10 to 15 days and they can take a feedback. And if the feedback went well, they should continue. And if the feedback is not good, then they should change and again take a feedback. And ultimately, they reach to the appropriate, experimentation tools, which proves to be effective in the minds of students for gaining a knowledge, right? So that is called reflective observation, and reflective observation will always help you out what is right for you and what is wrong for you by looking at the historical performance. And once you see to it, you will reach to the conclusion through the abstract conceptualization, and that will give you a sense and draw a conclusion that which methods are good for me, and I would be able to continue the momentum for the future part, right? So this will give you an edge, this will give you a platform to perform, because you have learned from your previous mistakes and you also have learned from your previous good efforts, right? So you will continue with those efforts and you will try to mitigate those mistakes. That is called abstract conceptualization. And once you have abstract conceptualization to the conclusion, you always have active experimentation. So once you reach at the particular standardized method of teaching learning, then you keep going momentum with those methods. But on a contrary, side by side, you also try to adopt few other changes which is happening into the market through the active experimentations, right? So that is where again you try to test you draw the conclusion, and you will also develop a future plan of action, with the adoption of new technologies, new experimentation, new methods, along with the synchronization efforts of the existing efforts on which you are continuing, right? And that is where, once you reach at certain platforms, to momentum and to continue your work, so once you are settled down, then you can experiment those things, right? So this is very, very important, that active experimentations will always comes when we always have the abstract conceptualization in terms of the standardized methods to teach, which is adopted by the others also, and they have gained some positive and fruitful results. Right. So that is where we first need to identify the common acceptable methods for innovative teaching. And once we were able to deliver those things, and then we already settled down, then we can do the experimentation. Let's see the cycle of experiential learning. So how the cycle of experiential learning comes. So yes, this is the ultimate cycle of experiential learning. So you first, uh, once this activity is going to occur, right, you must meet certain process, certain criteria, certain hierarchies, right? Once you have it, you always experience, you always have tested, you always have tried, right? So based on the test experimentations, you might have certain reactions and observations to be shared, right? You might have experienced certain things, right, which you want to share with your people, right, about your experience, about your exposures. How was the experience, whether it was good, whether it was not good, right? So that is where you will try to share based on the experience that you have received by involving yourself into practical process. Once you share those things, right, then you will determine the patterns of the process. So what went well, you always try to drop it out, but on a contrary, you also have some positive experience. So based on positive experience, how the journey of experience in terms of the positive results has happened. So you'll try to draw the parameters in which process you went well and in which process your performance was moderate. So through which you can understand your mistakes, you can understand, you can able to draw your patterns, and you will try to determine in a practical manner. And based on this pattern that you have defined, you will try to infer in terms of establishing relations, establishing relations, and through which you will try to cover the principles, right, that has to be derived through this process. And based on all the principles, experimentations, results, experience, so you'll try to derive the actual process through which you can make things possible, and you will continue your momentum in the subject, or in the classes, or in the schools, or in the you know particular degree in which you are dealing with, right? So ultimately your objective is to provide the effective and efficient teaching learning process to your target audience, right? So that is where we have to see the cycle of experience, right? So cycle of experience is on a trial and error method. You keep share, you keep analyze, you keep making inferences about the results and start applying it. Now we will discuss, we have already discussed the meaning, process, cycle. Now ultimately we will decide the methods. So whenever we are experimenting all those methods, we always need to see the cycles and the process, because these cycles and process will help you out to decide which is actually the better methods for us, right? So that is where it plays an important role. Okay, so the first is the field trips that we have to decide. So field trip is one of the method. The second is the narratives. Third is conducting experiments. Fourth is simulations, games, storytelling, focused imagine, field observation, role playing, model building, and surveys. So these are the few methods which I have taken, so in a respective field in which you are, and based on the applicability in your field, you can decide that which method is right for you and which method is not good for you. So again, where you have to infer about the results that you are receiving from the feedback and responses during the classroom and after the classroom, right? So you are the ultimate decider whether the things well for you and whether the things are not well for you. If it is not well for you, then what are the improvements that you need to look forward, right? So this is in your hands, right? So that is where you have to decide. Okay. So this is field trip, right? So you take people on the actual topic, props, or the subjects that you want to discuss among the students into the classroom, right? So this is a structured activities, right, which occurs beyond the classroom. So you are not restricting students up to the four, walls of the classes, but you are taking them outside the classroom and through which this is the actual list. You just remember the Chinese proverb, tell me I remember, share, show me I understand, but involve me I remember. Right. So this is a field trip where you are not involving yourself to do the things in an actual way, but here you are observing the process. But although it is more effective in comparison to the classroom teaching, right? So here the theoretical lecture is not happening, but you are putting yourself into the actual field, and you will try to understand the particular process observation, right? So here at least you can create 50% of the understanding, right, for any subject or object that you are looking for, right? So that is called observational activities, right? That stays longer in terms of the sustainable investigations for any of the subject or content that you are looking for in comparison to the classroom, right? So it is one of the method, right? So it makes you be clear what to do because you are practically observing the process. You instruct the students about their roles and responsibilities. So once the process is over, students have practically see the process, and they have also observed the different personalities, different roles, different responsibilities, right? So whatever topic concept that you will try to demonstrate to the students, right? So it is very easy for the faculties also to demonstrate the theories in the minds of students by practically showing them the process, taking them out of the market, and let them allow to observe it and develop their understanding. That is called field trip. And that's where you must take a feedback from the students that how was the learning experience by going into the practical field, and how they have enjoyed this teaching learning process instead of making this theoretical fundamental knowledge into the classroom, right? So that's where you make a difference. Narratives, it's a storytelling things, so it's a kind of essay, right? So instead of, just remember, and you must have observed that students are learning by their home. They are coming for the next day of exam. You are at the invigilator duty in the classroom. You always talk to the students, please come inside for the exam appearance. But you must observe the process that on the last day, not on the last day, on the same day, in the last minutes, students are keep sharing things that they have learned. Why they are doing this? It's not like that they are experimenting, but this is psychologically accepted experiments among the humans, that instead of what you are learning by your own, right, but what you are hearing from the others will have the better sustainability, in consideration that you are learning any particular things, right, in your personal level, right? So what you are hearing from others will remember for long period of time and with clear understanding, right? So that is where point to point information needs to be provided. So, and that's why the classroom teaching learning process is also be the part of it, right? In theoretical lectures, if the theories are there, then students will be able to read the theory. But why they are coming to the classes? Because they want to have a better understanding from hearing from the others, and they can develop their practical understanding. Because psychologically it has been said that when you are speaking, you are not applying your mind, but when you are listening others, you start analyzing, you start applying your critical thinking power, and that's where you will be able to develop the better understanding as a part of the good listener in comparison to the good speaker, right? So yes, storytelling is one of the observation through which it is nearest to the classroom teaching and learning process. But yeah, you can make it more interesting in terms of making the content from the largest to the smallest and make it as a story, create an interest, create a synergy, create a questions, right, create a surprise, and through which the students should involve themselves into this curiosity, and your purpose is getting solved, right? So they will pay attention, and you would be able to deliver your sessions without any hurdles. Experiments, so this is applicable to all the practical applications like computer application, chemical, bioscience, biotechnology, right? Even in data science and all this. So you have to keep doing experiment, and after doing multiple attempts, you would be able to reach at certain good output, right? So that is where it is called to be experimentation. So experimentation is always based on hypothesis, as we are in social science, so we are taking sample studies to define hypothesis. So we are making inferences about the population based on the results that we have received from the sample size, right? So we are inferencing that if at all I am taking 2 drops of this chemical, right? So the results which I have received from these 2 drops of chemical would be same if I want to make it in a more quantity. So I have to use it, instead of 2 drops, I will use 2000 drops, right? So this is called hypothesis. That's where this kind of experiments always provides an insight of cause and effect that you have already experienced by undergoing this kind of process. And if at all, with the small size of sample, the students can be able to manipulate the things. And sometimes this kind of manipulation will turn out from the student side to be an experiment. And through which this experiment, students should learn the behavior of certain process, certain products, certain services, and through which they will be able to infer about the behavior of the products and services, and through which they will gain a better understanding with consideration of different situations, and through which they can provide a better solution for the future. So that is where we are producing a good businessman, good scientist, good researcher, if at all we are putting experimentation into the practice in all the field in which we are, and in a manner it has to be applicable. I'm not saying that the management people should have more experimentation than the chemical. Practically it is not possible. Yeah, in a manner it has to be possible. We must try it, right? So that is where experiments. Simulation, so it is an effect of the comparison between audio, video, and practical application. So just remember, if you remember only radio, right? If you remember only things on a radio, and if you see the things on picture visualization through the mode of TV or your mobile phones through social media, so tell me in which mode of looking at the things you will have a better understanding. You are listening any ads on radio, or you are practically observing the process through the audio visual effect on the TV, Netflix, right? So obviously the audio visual effect, but at the same time, whatever you are looking into ad, right, in certain process or certain things, right? Or let's say many a times faculties are showing YouTube videos to the students. I'm not saying that it is not good, but instead, whatever process is happening in this YouTube video, but if at all, I'm not saying for all the things, but at least for one or two things, if at all we make an arrangement that students should practically involve them into doing those process, then they would be able to, see it, feel it, understand it, and create their own understanding. And that is where kinesthetic process, where touching and doing, right? So students are practically involved in doing those process, and at the same time they are observing the behavior effects of the others. And there are many methods of simulations where you can do physical simulation, role playing, right, business simulation, right, and military simulation, right? So these are the various field in which we can create this simulation, and through which we would be able to create the better understanding, right? So that is where simulation. Gameplay, so this is practically game, right? So let's say if commerce people are there, then we should have some stock market game, right? If science students are there, then they should have some games to create some chemical or certain mixture of any things where you can create some new products with the consideration of time and efforts and effectiveness. So anyway, any field has their own games, own rules, but yeah, we should see to it that it should ultimately impact the understanding of the student, because they are involving them practically into this process. So they are practically doing it the process and creating an understanding, right? So that is where the gameplay plays an important role. So commerce students should always play a stock market game, business game, where they will able to understand the right time, right place, and the value of money, right? So that is where the understanding will come. It's the understanding will never be going to come out when the lecture is going on that money is very important. I know money is important, but how is important needs to create in the minds of students, right? So that's where students will able to understand the importance of money. Storytelling. So instead of reading each and every line, we first need to read it, understand it, summarize it, and put out some important points, right? And that we have to download it, transfer to the students. And that's where we can be able to create better understanding among the group of students. And at the same time, instead of having long theoretical knowledge, we should make it very short and convert it into practical aspect by demonstrating some great examples, right? If adding some sounds, video, visuals, and if at all some narratives in terms of some punches, that's where the students will motivate, and they will come back from the monotonous teaching learning process in terms of physical class. Focused imagine, give them some problems, right, and allow them to think about it, allow them to create some solutions, allow them to create some understanding. And that's where the power of imagination and visualization about the particular process will be designed, right? So you can see the image where the two people are there. So the first person that you can see on the screen, which have the zigzag in the mind, because the person has learned it, heard it, but he has not experienced it. He don't know how to reach from the heads to mouth, right? And that's where he is he's moving here and there, and ultimately he's reaching, but he is facing a lot of hurdles, and ultimately he would not be able to perform his task effectively and efficiently in a manner the person who is practically involved in the process, and he know how to roam the circle and how to create a path, and that's where how to create an effective solutions for the problem, right? So this is where the focused imagine. So until and unless if you are not allowing your students to involve themselves into practical problems, they would not be able to create a practical solutions, right? So that is very, very important that some brainstorming sessions, some feedback, some question answer should always be allowed in the classroom teaching and as a part of the assignments also. So that is where the students should be involve themselves into the practical process. Field observation. So this is a stock market. Always send your students as much as you can in some field events, where they have natural settings, some observations, they have some own research, that's where they would be able to develop some understanding and they will start applying into the practical theory. So whatsoever theory that they have to learn, so whenever they sit for the reading, the picture which they have observed in the field will automatically come in front of their mind, and they would be able to synchronize, they would be able to align all those concepts in the practical manner in their minds, right? So field observations plays an important role where they have to practically perform the task and create an understanding. Role playing, very, very important tools, right? If in social science, if it talks about many a times students are making fun of the other professions, like the doctors, even in social media we say that doctors are cheating, but how much cheating we need to understand it. The role of doctor, sometimes if they have failed to save the patients, or if at times sometimes they put some wrong observation on the patients. So again, it is in the front of doctors also that they should have practical understanding, and that's why in the field of doctor you don't have to attend 8 hours 9 hours of colleges, but you just have to learn in 3 hours lecture and 5 hours of practices, because practice makes means perfect, right? Until and unless if the doctor will not perform, no doctors can read the books and make an operation on the first day. No, they have to undergo for the training of 2 3 years down the line. They have to gain an experience, and even after entering into the field of doctor, they have to keep learning, right? Because new problems has arisen, new medicine has been arrived, new technology has arrived, and if they are not learning, they will be outdated. No person will come for this doctor to make an operation, right? So if the COVID has came, if the doctor says that I will not learn the COVID symptoms and the medicine for the COVID, and I'll deny to handle the patient of COVID. So should doctor put a board on the, his medical clinic that COVID patients are not allowed, right? So how doctor will come that this is COVID? If the patient knows that he has a COVID, why he will come to you? He'll directly take a medicine, right? So, but a doctor has to check the patients, identify the symptoms, and then he has to suggest some test that needs to be done, and through which the problem needs to be identified, right? So yes, you can't avoid your responsibility. You can't avoid the knowledge which is required in your field, and it is most important that if at all you want to become a successful person in your field, that you need to gain all the changes, all the knowledges, and you must adopt all the process which are essential in your field, right? In whatsoever hypothetical situation in which you are, right? And that's where you can create a better understanding, right? So the doctor who is practicing, with other doctors that how to do the operations, then he would be able to do in a better way, right? So yes, you have to perform first with some experienced person, and then only you can put yourself into the practice. Model building, it is usually for the civil engineer person, right? They have to make models based on some parameters and the measurements for creating a buildings, and that's where they can be able to do their job. Surveys, so yes, survey in a sense, for you can ask for opinions, observations, and through which the people can provide a feedback for the particular process, right? And through this process and feedback, you will came to know your mistakes, and you will try to incorporate those mistakes for the future. So this is what it's all about, surveys. So thank you so much for all the patient listening, and this is from my side. Now I want to make this sessions open for the question. Yes, so if at all any questions, please ask. Any questions?
Yes, participants,
Hello.
queries.
Yes, madam.
Sir, this session is really very good. Actually, I am a innovation ambassador at my university. There we covered the, you can say, some of the expert workshops related to NEP 2020. But I felt present these things that is covered in NEP 2020 is not implemented at university level. If we talk about some of the rules, we are bounded with the teaching rules, like we are not allowed to show them the YouTube videos. That is more good because sometimes the theoretical knowledge is not sufficient. If we talk about engineering, if we are able to present them more, uh, we can say the practical models, that would be easy to understand and learn as well. But we are not allowed for that. So I think it should be implemented, and as per the government norms, it should be considered at every institute.
See, NEP, once it has been introduced, but the implementation process is still on the question mark. You are right, right? Because it has not been implemented wholeheartedly. There are certain parameters which has been implemented, and there are certain parameters still are under the observation. So they are also on the experimentation stage, right? So first of all, I'll let me clear on this point. Right. Second aspect, which you told that they are not allowing you to YouTube videos and something. So I don't know. Might be there are certain faculties who have misutilized those freedoms into the past. Right. So we need to understand. Sometimes what faculties are doing it. That if some faculty is sitting in your class and they might observe that based on the requirement of the content you have added two videos into the lectures. And what faculties are doing it, instead of learning why this video has been injected into the classes, they must see to it, oh, she has shown 10 minutes video, right? So she don't have to speak for 10 minutes. Let's enjoy it. So what they are doing it, instead of 10 minutes, they are putting it 30 minutes, irrespective of the consideration that whether it is required for the content, whether it is aligning with the content, they are just showing the videos and finishing their lectures, right? So apart, whenever we talks about innovative teaching, so it is very challenging as far as the implementation is concerned, because until and unless if the faculty is not responsible, faculty is not knowledgeable, then it is very difficult to incorporate those things, because the utilization process should always go with the alignment of the objective for putting those videos and synchronizing with the topic that you are trying to cover, because the ultimate objective of utilization of any mode of experiential teaching learning pedagogy is to create a better understanding about the topic that you are trying to portray among the students.
Sir, I also think one thing that if a teacher is willing to do so, and there should be a rule that the teacher need to record that lecture. Means that would be a genuine way to present. If the teacher is willing that I want to go with this method of teaching, and I'm ready for the recording as well, so that there is no misuse of the resources based on the teacher wish.
It depends on the faculty, right? That what she has to do and what she can do it, right? So this is generous question, and there is no obvious answer for this, because person to person things are changing. But yeah, again I told you, no, if you are doing experimentation, then you will not commit a mistakes. But your objective is only to show the videos, and finish your lecture. So then there is no mean to discuss on this platform also, right? On a general sense, I'm saying it, right? So the for person who is having an objective for making their lectures to be on the innovative mode, for them it is there, right? But the person who wants to think about it, let's say I'm not ready for today's lecture, let's show the video and finish the session. So if the situational based approach is there, then the entire objective for putting this kind of instrument and the
Yes.
willingness is completely going into the dustbin.
So, for example, I once teach the digital electronics, and there we also ask the students to make projects. For that, we have some of the online platform where we can show them that how the sync can be done using the various components before it is done in reality. So, such kind of things, I'm just asking as an example. These things can be covered in the lecture because we are not permitted to do so presently.
Obviously, even who said that you should involve them, even you can share your practical experience, right? That is also experiential learning, right? You share your experience, right, on the particular topic which you have already undergone in your life. That also you can show you, right? So this is a part of storytelling, right? So it is in your hand. That I'm not saying that you should always utilize YouTube's, you should always send the students for every concept to in the field. It's not possible, right? But let's cover some concept and allow them to go into the market and allow them to observe multiple you know parameters that they need to observe, or rather you give an assignment that you must need to observe these parameters, right? So you have to bind them, right? Yesterday only we had discussed, until and unless if the students will not understand the responsibility, they will not create their better future. So it is our responsibility to make them aware about it and try to save them from going into the from wrong path. So it is in our hands how we are guiding, how we are mentoring, right? And that's where it makes a difference.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay, sir.
Narmada madam, you have some question.
Hello.
Yes.
Um, yeah. Thank you for your talk yesterday and today as well. And I've been attending all the sessions. I just was wondering how uh, are we to retain all of these steps? I mean, it is very explanatory, and there are so many processes that are involved. Could we, I mean, it's not a question, but rather a clarification as to at the end of it, would we have some exercises or something that we can present in writing, which would probably help us to kind of, not just grasp these concepts, but also understand the ways in which it can be, used.
See, first of all, the things can be provided based on the applicability, right? So here we are from the different fields, right? So if I'll talk about the chemical field, for
Hmm.
chemical field, the
Hmm.
storytelling will not applicable,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
For
Hmm.
which, for them, the experimentations is going to be applicable, right? So first of all, we need to understand the objective of the content that we are delivering to the students. And firstly, we need to observe in the market that what is happening for this particular topic or concept. We also read some research papers, or we should also discuss with some experts, right? So, how was their experience and how is delivering this kind of topics to the students, you know? So, we should take the expert opinion, and based on that, we should try and experiment something, right? I'm not saying that even geographical wise, also for me, what I'm doing experience in the same field, for you also, it is not possible because surroundings is not supporting. Right. So we need to understand the various limitations of the topic, of the surroundings, and the application part. Right. So applicability might differ from person to person, topic to topic, and area to area. Right. But the ultimate objective is we must think about it that if I'm teaching some topic today to the students, right, then what are the pros and cons, right, which
Hmm.
are associated with it, and how to overcome with it by making them better understanding with the consideration of time and efforts, right? So that is very, very important. Let's say you are teaching one subject. I'm not saying that the experiential learning should be possible for every topic, or for every topic you should send the students to the practical market. But at some instance, right, there should be some synchronization of the topic with consideration of the particular subject. So after finishing some topics, we should decide at what time which experiential learning should be utilized. For certain concept, you should utilize storytelling. For some concept, you should utilize video. For some concept, you should utilize some process that you should demonstrate in the class. And for some two, three concept, you can send the students to the practical learning. Again, it depends upon the area and field in which you are dealing with. There is no proper answer for everyone that you should start with this and you should end with this because it
So,
is qualitative things.
so I work in a public university, and we have like around 200 to 220 students at the postgraduate level. And so, how does even one begin to engage these students? I mean, there are constraints, of course, and we are also dealing with huge syllabus which we have to complete it by the end of 3 or 4 months. And so yes, we do understand that smaller classes, such experiments can be done, where students can be engaged, but every time to come up with a different kind of method in order to put across our lectures. I mean, that is another whole different kind of an exercise, and that we have to be engaging with. We are already what you would call a burnout society.
See, I told you in the first instance also, for every topic, it is not possible. We have to decide that, I have particular syllabus in my hand, so I should have some scrutiny and some selective parameters, right? That if at all, you should have the workout with, academic and industry requirements, right? So if you feel that this topic should have better encouraging point for the industry point of view, so you must see to it that whenever the students are getting graduated from your university or institute, that at least this topic should be properly understood by the students. This is just an hypothetical example, right? So for this kind of topic, you should give some assignments with the students in terms of going into practical way into the market and observe the process and come out with your own experience, right? So this is one kind of learning that you can create. So rather than taking assignments into some physical submission or on the Google Classroom to the soft copy, right? Let's take a viva, let's take a feedback to the students, and that could be the better learning process for others. So here, once students are learning, others are listening, and that's where you can able to create a synergy. So for one topic, you can utilize multiple teaching learning process. So it is depends upon the faculty how he should demonstrate, how he's observing with the multiple experiments, right? So even in your field also you have to keep doing this trial and error for the multiple times, and that's where you will be able to create a better synergy in your classroom. So if you feel that you need to send 15 or 20 group of students, right, to the market and allow them to learn it and share with their colleagues, so you should provide a platform, right, to have in terms of presentations, right, allow them to create some videography and share with the people, right. So people are also observing the live demonstration, right, their own experience. So instead of carrying your lecture for that particular topic, you should create this kind of teaching learning process. I'm not saying that for every topic you have to do it. Obviously, it is a suicide. I'm not saying that. But for what a topic where you can able to manage the traffic of the students, you must imply it. And it is subject to the field in which you are dealing with. And it is completely in the hands of the faculty where to apply, how to apply, and to whom they have to apply.
And with regard to the students' feedback, would you think this continuous process of evaluation, should be carried out, like, given the existing ways, existing method in which the evaluation system works? How do you think that we can bring in these tools with the evaluative standards, both from the perspective of the teacher and also from the feedback which is received from the students?
See, even in my university, it happens, right? So obviously there are pros and cons, both are associated. But the person who is executing this particular process needs to ensure that the maximum bias, right, during that process, which is happening, needs to be avoided, and transparent results needs to be provided. But rather, instead, taking those feedbacks in a very rigorous manner. So this kind of process should be, at the faculty level, we should consider rather than university or institute level, because the feedback should be, for the faculties for the improvement. But on a contrary side, there are two sides of coins, right? There are few faculties who are doing the job, but there are few faculties, who are not portraying their jobs, very sincerely. So
Yes.
again, there are 10% of the staffs who belongs to this category. For them, in a
Right.
certain way, university and institute needs to design some mechanism. So if at all we are doing our duty, then there is nothing to be worried on this part.
Yeah.
Obviously 2-5% is there, but obviously when we are in the system, we have to abide by the rules. So again, it is not in my hands also to comment on it. But yeah, what you raise a question, I can understand your query. So again, but yeah, if at all our deliveries are okay, students are satisfied with us, I think we don't have to bother about this process. But rather, this process will also teach us, sometimes if you are receiving your feedback from the university, so you will try to get, your feedbacks on multiple parameters. So at least you will have some, historical observation that what went well and, what was not well. So you will also try to incorporate some changes in a certain instances where it is required.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time and your, the clarification that you put across. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Yeah. Any other questions?
नमस्कार श्रीमान जी।
Namaskar, sir.
अगर हमें किसी कक्षा में बच्चे मिलते हैं, हम टीचिंग कर रहे हैं, बच्चे सीख रहे हैं, तो सीखने में और शिक्षण में और सीखने में एक संबंध होता है कि सहसंबंध बनेगा तो सफल माना जाएगा। वहां पर अलग अलग वर्ग के विद्यार्थी हैं। एक वर्ग ऐसा है कि जिसका आईक्यू लेवल अच्छा है, एक का मध्यम है, तीसरे का निम्न है, और हम अपने आधार पर देखते हैं कि हम शिक्षण सफल कर रहे हैं और वो फर्स्ट ग्रुप वाले बच्चे संतुष्ट हो रहे हैं, सेकंड वाले भी संतुष्ट हो रहे हैं। अगर एक ग्रुप संतुष्ट नहीं हो रहा तो हम वहां संतुलन कैसे बनाएं?
देखिए, आपको सारे ग्रुप्स को कवर करना है, तो मैं समझता हूँ कि आज का जो हमारा डिस्कशन था कि एक्सपीरियंशियल लर्निंग, वो वही है। जैसे आपने बोला कि एक वर्ग है वो पूरा समझ रहा है, दूसरा है वो आधा समझ रहा है, तीसरा है वो शायद बहुत कम समझ रहा है। तो एक्सपीरियंशियल लर्निंग का काम ही वही है कि जो ग्रुप सब समझ रहा है वो तो क्लासरूम डिलीवरी से भी समझ जाएगा, उनके लिए आपको कुछ नहीं करना है। दे आर सेल्फ लर्नर पीपल, राइट? वो अपने आप ही समझ लेंगे। आपका एफर्ट कहाँ जाता है, जो मध्यम थोड़ा बहुत और जो मेजरली जो बहुत कम समझ रहे हैं, तो इन्हीं के लिए तो बोला जाता है कि आप एक्सपीरियंशियल लर्निंग करिए। ठीक है, कुछ ग्रुप ऐसे होते हैं जो थियोरेटिकल नॉलेज से बहुत ही हेट करते हैं वो लोग, राइट। तो जैसे हम एक बात समझिए कि जैसे आपको कहीं क्लासरूम के अंदर बिठाया जाए और आपको बोला जाए कि भाई आप 1 घंटे तक इसको सुनिए, तो आप नहीं सुनेंगे। बट उसी बच्चे को आप कभी मूवी देखने ले जाइए, राइट, सो ही विल ऑलवेज पे अटेंशन, राइट। उसको मिनट टू मिनट याद होगा, सीन टू सीन याद होगा। उसका कारण क्या है? बिकॉज फर्स्टली उसका इंटरेस्ट बन रहा है। क्यों? क्योंकि उसको लेक्चर नहीं सुनना है, उसको एक एंटरटेनमेंट में जाना है, इसको एक लाइव डेमोन्स्ट्रेशन देखना है जिसमें उसको कुछ नहीं करना है, सामने वाला सब कुछ कर रहा है, एंड ही हैज टू ऑब्जर्व द प्रोसेस। सो क्लासरूम टीचिंग लर्निंग प्रोसेस भी इसी का कारण है कि आप जितना लेक्चर्स करोगे उसको उनमें इंटरेस्ट नहीं है, ठीक है, या तो ऑडियो विजुअल कनेक्शन उसके सामने नहीं है, तो दे डोंट वांट टू अंडरस्टैंड। तो ऑडियो विजुअल साइकोलॉजिकल बैकग्राउंड से इसीलिए लाया गया है कि what they listen, they will not listen because they will forget, they will not pay attention. But if they see the process, they might pay attention, because they have to pay attention because others are paying attention. Why people are not talking in theaters? Because the other backgrounds are completely dark, so you are forced to focus on the screen, right? So we have to create some mechanism in front of students where they have been forced to learn this concept, right, by hook or by crook. And that is what the mechanism that we have to develop among the students as a part of innovative teaching learning process.
लेकिन श्रीमान जी, कई बार ऐसा होता है कि जहाँ ग्रामीण क्षेत्रों में मूलभूत सुविधाओं का अभाव है, कुछ कॉलेज ऐसे हैं या यूनिवर्सिटी, मतलब सब में लगभग ऑडियो विजुअल एड है, लेकिन कॉलेजों में कई बार अभाव होता है, वहां पर कैसे संतुलन साधा जाए?
अब वहां तो देखो एक्सपीरियंस नहीं हो सकता है, तो जितने इंस्ट्रूमेंट आपके पास, ऑब्वियसली अगर आपके पास इंस्ट्रूमेंट का अभाव है तो आप जितने हैं उसमें ही कर सकते हैं, उसमें तो आगे मैं क्या बोलूं, ठीक है। या तो कॉलेजेस बसाए, ठीक है, अभाव क्यों है पता नहीं है, बिकॉज जितनी भी गवर्नमेंट कॉलेजेस है वहां पे ग्रांट्स तो मिलती है, तो अभाव किस बात पे है वो क्वेश्चन मार्क है। और फिर भी है तो अब तो उनका पर्सनल क्वेश्चन है। अब उसमें तो व्हाट शुड आई डू, मेरा तो काम है कि हम आज विकसित भारत की बात कर रहे हैं, है ना, भारत एट 2047 की बात कर रहे हैं, और आज भी हम इसी बात पे अड़े रहेंगे तो आगे कब बढ़ेंगे वो क्वेश्चन मार्क है, ठीक है। और एक्सपीरियंशियल लर्निंग की जब बात हो रही है, तो एक्सपीरियंशियल लर्निंग का मतलब ये है कि एक्सपीरियंस नहीं होगा तो कुछ नहीं होगा, ठीक है। तो एक्सपीरियंशियल लर्निंग के लिए हमें इनोवेशन करना चाहिए भारत में, इसीलिए तो रिसर्च नहीं हो रहा है ना, लोग रिसर्च ही नहीं करना चाहते, जो चल रहा है वो चला रहे हैं, पर उससे तो आगे नहीं बढ़ेंगे ना। तो या तो उनको बदलना पड़ेगा, सिस्टम को बदलना पड़ेगा, सिस्टम नहीं बदलोगे तब तक कुछ नहीं बदलेगा, ठीक है। फिर तो आज का मेरा लेक्चर उन लोगों के लिए बिल्कुल नहीं है जिनके पास फैसिलिटी नहीं है, क्योंकि फैसिलिटी के बिना तो फिर आप कैसे करोगे, उसमें फैकल्टी भी कोई गलती नहीं है। अगर फैकल्टी के पास रिसोर्सेज ही नहीं है तो फिर क्या करेंगे, फैकल्टी को बोला जाएगा लाइट नहीं है, पंखे नहीं है, आप बैठो करके, तो फिर तो वहां पे तो क्लासरूम टीचिंग ही होगा, फिर तो कोई प्रोजेक्टर लेके मैं तो नहीं आऊंगा, क्या करेंगे फिर, तो वो तो लिमिटेशंस रहेंगी नहीं।
हाँ सर, आपकी बात ये सही है, लेकिन ये बात भी है कि जो मूलभूत सुविधाएं हैं उनका ग्रामीण परिवेश में बहुत अभाव रहता है। हालांकि मैं तो कैंपस में हूँ, यूनिवर्सिटी कैंपस में, वहाँ पे सब प्रकार की सुविधाएं हैं, लेकिन पहले जब मैं भी एक कॉलेज लेवल में ही था तब वहाँ पर मूलभूत सुविधाओं का अभाव था। तब मैंने देखा कि वो सारी बातें जो आज की नई शिक्षा नीति में दे दी गई हैं वो वहाँ पे लागू नहीं हो पाती। लेकिन हाँ, ये है कि आपका लेक्चर आज बहुत अच्छा था, प्रभावी था, उसके लिए मैं आपको धन्यवाद देता हूँ।
नहीं, इट्स ओके, इट्स ओके। अल्टीमेटली मेरा ये नहीं है कि भाई आप मुझे ये बोलो, अच्छा है आपका, भगवान की दया से फीडबैक्स अच्छे आते हैं, बट मेरा ये कहना है कि हम जो भी कर रहे हैं उसका एक आउटपुट निकलना चाहिए। अगर आउटपुट नहीं है तो फिर कुछ नहीं है, और आउटपुट इनपुट के बिना नहीं आता, ये तो आप समझ रहे हो।
हाँ हाँ, ये तो है।
ठीक है, तो इनपुट नहीं है तो आउटपुट कहाँ से आएगा, सीधी सी बात है ना। अगर आज मेरे पास लैपटॉप नहीं है या मेरे लैपटॉप में ऑडियो नहीं, वीडियो, मैं हर लेक्चर में अपना वीडियो ऑन रखता हूँ, मैं कभी वीडियो बंद नहीं करता हूँ, क्योंकि मैं भी मानता हूँ कि आप मेरा एक्सप्रेशन देखोगे तो आप भी समझोगे, है ना। अभी आपके साथ मैं कितनी सिंसियरिटी से बात कर रहा हूँ तो आप वो फील कर सकते हो। अगर मैं वही चीज यहाँ पे, लेट्स से द लाइव डेमोन्स्ट्रेशन, अब मैंने ये ऑडियो बंद कर दिया, आप मेरे इमोशंस को क्या समझोगे?
भाव और संवेग का तो संबंध होता है।
ऑब्वियसली जब आप मेरे रिएक्शंस को देख रहे हो तो आप समझ रहे हो, तो आप इंपॉर्टेंस भी समझ रहे हो, ठीक है। तो साइकोलॉजिकल इम्पैक्ट तो है, बट उसके लिए इंस्ट्रूमेंट नहीं है तो फिर क्या करें?
नहीं,
इंस्ट्रूमेंट
आपकी बात बिल्कुल सही है, मैं आपकी बात से संतुष्ट हूँ, लेकिन ये एक प्रश्न रह जाता है कि
नहीं,
जहाँ पर नई
आपका
शिक्षा
सवाल बिल्कुल जायज है सर।
नई शिक्षा नीति जहाँ लागू हो रही है, एक बार एक हमारे यूनिवर्सिटी लेवल पे ही सेमिनार हो रहा था, तो मैंने यही प्रश्न किया था कि जहाँ पर मूलभूत सुविधाओं का अभाव है तो हम इस नई शिक्षा नीति को वहां पर कैसे और कब लागू करेंगे, क्योंकि समानता का प्रश्न बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है।
पहले शिक्षा नीति में ये लाना चाहिए कि सुविधाएं बनाइए।
सबसे पहले सुविधाएं होनी चाहिए,
अदरवाइज इट इज ऑलवेज अगेन इट इज ऑन पीस ऑफ पेपर। ठीक है,
ठीक है, धन्यवाद आप।
एनी मोर क्वेश्चन? चलिए ठीक है, so I think everybody is getting late, so thank you so much for connecting again for the second day of my session. Thank you so much all the participants, Research Foundation of India, Ajay sir, Saurabh sir, Neha madam, again for the extended time for today also. Thank you so much for all the audience for patient listening, and I hope the session will go into the positive manner, right? The intention is not to hurt any intention, to any person, any organization, but yes, as a part of resource person, I have to answer certain questions, which I have tried my level best. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So it's
Thank
time
you, sir.
this wonderful session. But before that, we wish to extend our heartfelt appreciation to all participants for their invaluable contributions. The special acknowledgement goes to our esteemed speaker, Dr. Kunal Soni sir, for generously sharing his expertise with us. And we also express sincere gratitude to the organizing committee and sponsors for their support. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night, all of you. Good night.
Thank you,
Night.
sir. Thank you, ma'am. Good night.